Hello students, today we are going to discuss the last two sections of the poem The Ode to the West Wind that are the concluding sections of this poem. As before, we have discussed the previous three sections of the poem, and as I've already told you that what the poet was doing up until now was he was not imparting a personal note to the poem up until to the point of three sections. That means he was simply describing the force and the impact of west wind on the nature. That is, first he described it among the leaves on the trees in the autumn season, then he went forward and described it in the clouds or in the air, and lastly he described the force and the effect it had on the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. That is, we were talking about the water bodies. But now the tone and the entire demeanor of the poet changes in the fourth and the fifth sections of the poem. In these two sections, the poet has shifted its attitude towards the west wind and has gone ahead and imparted a sort of personal pleading note to the west wind, in which the poet can be seen requesting the west wind more emphatically and forcefully. Earlier, what the poet was doing is the poet was actually describing to the audiences that what to him the west wind meant as a natural phenomenon and the force and the effects it could have on the nature and the way it is capable of transforming the nature itself. But in the sections 4 and 5, now initially he was pleading with the west wind, but not so forcefully and powerfully. But in the fourth and fifth sections now, he goes on and imparts a personal note to the west wind, in the sense that he goes on and powerfully and forcefully and pleadingly asks the west wind as to what the west wind needs to do for the poet himself. Since in the introduction of the poem, if you've heard that video previously, if not, please take a look at the links I've provided in the comments below and you can go to the introductory video of this lecture. In the introductory lecture of the video, I had already told you that the main purpose of Shelley behind writing this poem, that is Ode to the West Wind, was that he wanted to send his prophetic and poetic ideas out into the universe. That means he wanted that it was his inner desire, in a way, that he wanted the west wind to spread his poetic thoughts and words and ideals all across the globe in the act of its blowing. Because Shelley understood that he himself as a human was not as powerful and as strong as west wind itself. And I've already told you that around this time, that means when the poem West Wind was written by him, at this time the scholars or the literary scholars or the literary audiences of the romantic era were not as receptive and appreciative of the poetry that Shelley composed. So this was a way of Shelley through which he thought that he could rejuvenate his poetic powers and make the audiences see his work for what it was worth according to him. So in this section, the poet, that is Shelley, pleads with the west wind to come to his aid, and he goes on to say that he wishes that he were either a leaf. Now I would like you to go back to the previous three sections, because here what Shelley is doing is he's combining all the previous three sections, because he knows that he too is concluding the poem now. So he wants the west wind to treat him as an autumnal leaf, a cloud, a water wave, and carry him like all those things and take him upon its surface as he took the leaf, the cloud, and the water waves, and carry him with his force and emphatic power all across the globe, the way he does to the clouds, the leaves, and the water in the previous section. So, in this way, Shelley wants the west wind to come to his assistance and fill him with his power by carrying him upon its surface like a leaf, a cloud, or a water wave. So you can see that in this sense, the poet has imparted a very personal and emphatic note and appeal to the west wind. Moving on further, the poet becomes a bit of a braggart, and he says that he goes on to a bit bragging, and he says that when he was a child, that means when he was in his early boyhood, he was as swift and as powerful and as emphatic as the west wind himself. But now that he has fallen upon the thorns of life, he bleeds. Now, what this line actually means is that Shelley, maybe at this point of the poem, could be referring to the difficulties and the hard times that he must be facing in his personal life. As I had previously told you also in the introduction itself about the background, and this was my purpose behind telling you the background also, that I wanted you to know that what difficulties Shelley was facing prior to composing this poem, or probably at the time of the composition of this poem. So, as I had previously told you, you can always go back to the previous videos. They are all linked in the comment section below. But to tell you those difficulties in short, I will say that at the time of the composition of this poem, Shelley was facing an absolutely difficult time. For one, the literary circles were not receptive of his poetry. They were not taking him seriously as an artist or as a poet. Secondly, as I'd already told you, that he had lost his son William Shelley prematurely. So he was also mourning his demise probably. And thirdly, the most important reason is that Shelley, in terms of temperament, was a philosophical and a prophetical poet. That means he had a mindset of a revolutionary. And I had previously told you also that all the romantic poets, especially the early romantics, had this mentality of being a revolutionary. So all the poems that the earlier romantics composed had a note of rebellion and a sort of fight in them. Fight in the sense they wanted to change the world order. So in that sense, every poem that Shelley composed had an undernote of revolutionism in it. So in this section also, the west wind to Shelley appears to be an aid or an instrument that can help him spread his revolutionary word all across the globe, in the way that it will blow upon him and carry the poet. That means the Shelley wants the west wind to carry him upon its surface as an autumnal leaf, section 1, as a cloud, section 2, and as a water wave, as it did in the section 3. And now he wants that the west wind hopefully does the same thing to him and carry him upon its surface as a leaf, as a cloud, as a water wave. And in this way, by doing so, and in carrying him upon his surface, he aids him in spreading his poetry and prophetic thoughts all over the world. Now, third and the most important reason that I'm sorry, I must have left. I think I didn't mention it. So the third and the most important reason that Shelley was facing at the time of composition of this poetry was, and I'd also mentioned it in the introduction. So at this point of time, this was the time when the poem was written, that is in 1819, the French Revolution had come to a standstill. And the main reason why the French Revolution was started was to overthrow Napoleon Bonaparte. That means Napoleon Bonaparte was a tyrannical general and he wanted to control the people, much like Hitler did in Germany. But at this point of time, people were trying very hard to overthrow him and get rid of him and his rule. But precisely in the year 1819, it was seen by the people all around the world, as well as Shelley, that the idea of democracy that most people had in their minds, because they were tired of the tyrannical ways of Napoleon Bonaparte, unfortunately, the idea of democracy that they had started the French Revolution with had come to a standstill. So, around the year 1819 or 1820, when this poem was published, and it was written in 1819, so at this point of time, while Shelley was probably either contemplating writing this poem or he had already written, but like in 1819 he was writing the poem still, because it was published in 1820. So at this point of time, due to the environment that was playing out around him, especially in France, because he has written this poem in Italy, Florence to be precise. So in France, he was in the thick of all the environmental problems, or I should say rather the political problems. At this time, the idea of democracy had come to a standstill. That means the French Revolution was not much of a success at this point, and people were starting to lose their hope, and they were kind of disillusioned by their efforts, because their efforts were not paying off as such. So Shelley was frustrated in the sense that, first, his political dream was shattering in front of his eyes. That means the idea of democracy had come to a standstill. Secondly, he had recently lost his son, William Shelley, whose death he was most probably mourning around the time when this poem was both written as well as published. And thirdly, the audiences, that means the literary audiences, were not taking him seriously as a poet and his craft as well. So in that sense, this poem also becomes an instrument in which Shelley desperately wants a way or an outlet to vent out his frustration, and he does so in a beautiful way by making the west wind as his lyre and as his instrument. Lyre is a musical instrument which is quite commonly used as a symbolical and image device in the romantic poetry. Now, lyre is a direct reference to the Aeolian harp. Now, to tell you what is an Aeolian harp is a musical instrument in which music is produced when the wind blows upon it. That means Aeolian harp is a musical instrument that produces music when it is touched by the wind, or that means when the wind comes in contact with it. So what happened was, in the earlier times, or rather in the Greek times, people used to play Aeolian harp by placing it in the by placing it outside their houses. Like, they used to hang it from a branch of a tree, and it was usually done on a windy or a breezy day. So I would like you to imagine that there's an instrument called the Aeolian harp, and they used to hang that instrument in the air outside, probably in the porch or an open area, when air or wind was free to come in contact with it. And as the wind used to come in contact with it, the instrument supposedly played music. So it was an instrument which used to produce music when it used to come in contact with the wind or its waves. So in the same way, the poet, that is Shelley, wants the west wind to make him his Aeolian harp, or the musical instrument, the same way it has carried the autumnal leaves in the first section, the clouds in the second section, and the water waves in the third section. In the same way, poet says that I want the west wind to make me an instrument, and in that sense he compares himself to the lyre or the Aeolian harp, and want the west wind to play upon it. That means he wants the west wind to pass through him, as if the wind passes upon the strings of the Aeolian harp to produce music. So here the Shelley wants the west wind to make him his Aeolian harp and play upon it, as the west wind does to the leaves in the forest, clouds, and the water waves. In the same way, the poet believes that since the west wind has such a powerful and strong effect upon the nature itself, in the same way he wishes that probably the west wind will have the same effect upon him as well, and he hopes that while carrying him upon its surface as a leaf, as a cloud, or as a wave, he would be able to spread his prophetic, poetic, and revolutionary ideas all over the world. So, in this way, the poet hopes to make the west wind an instrument of his hopes and desires that he feels have come to a standstill completely and absolutely at the time of composing this poem. The reason why the poet is so keen on having the west wind come to his help is because the poet feels that now, with age, he has become weak and somewhat descript. Descript means he is unable to carry out his duties as powerfully and forcefully as he used to in his childhood or in his younger days. But that's why he asks the west wind to please come to his aid, because now he is unable to muster that strength and spread his prophetic word or poetic word all across the globe all by himself, because now he has fallen upon the thorns of life and he bleeds, which means that the poet is so burdened by his personal responsibilities, by the difficulties of his age, and the environment that he was living in and experiencing, that he feels that there is no strength left in him whatsoever that he can perform his daily duties and as powerfully as possible. So he desperately appeals to the west wind and asks him to come to his aid because he is unable to perform his revolutionary duties and spread about his prophetic ideas all by himself. So he hopes that when the west wind carries him upon its surface, he would be able to spread out and about his words all through the universe as the sparks are flown from a fire. That means he feels that his thoughts, which are yet unspoken and unheard, are like the sparks of fire which are capable of igniting a new age in the hearts and minds of the mankind. In the end, the poet concludes the poem on a very hopeful note, stating that if winter comes, can spring be far behind? Notice the hopeful and the positivity which the poet experiences while writing this line, wherein he says, when winter comes, can spring be far behind? Apart from the obvious meaning that could be taken from this concluding line, there is one underlying meaning to it. But first, I'll explain to you what the obvious meaning is. Spring, as I'd already told you in the first section, is a season of rejuvenation, revitalization, sprouting of seeds, when the vegetation comes to full bloom and the nature becomes happy in a way. That means it becomes more greener, more riper, and more refreshed after the winter season. So poet says, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? In the sense that winter is the season that comes right before the spring, and winter is the season, as I previously told you in the first section as well, that winter is the season in which the unsprouted and kind of dormant seeds lie buried into the ground before they sprout out of the ground and become plants. So in that sense, the poet says that if there is winter season, then there is obviously a spring season as well. That means if the idea, he's also referring to the idea, to his ideals of democracy and politics that is playing out around him at this point in time, and he says that if winter comes, spring cannot be far behind. That means he says that I don't mind the fact that the idea of democracy seems to have come to a standstill at this point in time. That means he's addressing the audiences and saying, particularly during the Romantic period, he was addressing the audiences that were present in the Romantic period, but the relevance of the poem and the ideals is still present, so we can take it like that as well. He says that no matter how much people and the general audiences feel that the idea of democracy and freedom has come to a standstill, I still believe that despite of the winter that is the tyrannical rule of Napoleon Bonaparte, so he says that no matter what happens, and even though I can see that the idea of democracy, that means according to him at that point in time, winter was going on as the idea of democracy had come to a standstill. So he says that no matter and how difficult the times and the environment have become today, and no matter how sad and depressed people in general and I might feel about the political life that is playing out around me and the political things that have been playing out around me, and no matter how personally depressed I feel, still I think that if winter has come, spring is never far behind. That means each and every time a person becomes sad, in that sadness too, there are certain sparks of hope and happiness that eventually come out and bring about a new age and vigor into the humanity. That means the spring always follows the winter season. The rhyme scheme of this poem is Teresa Rima, and it goes something along the lines of ABA, BCB, CDC. Now, Teresa Rima was an poetic form, which was a rhyme scheme, rather, not a poetic form, sorry. So, it was a rhyme scheme which was invented by Dante Alighieri in his Divine Comedy. But what initially Dante did was, the original rhyme scheme of Teresa Rima was ABA, BCB, CDC, and that's it. But while writing the Ode to the West Wind, what Shelley did is Shelley added one more couplet to Teresa Rima, and therefore the rhyme scheme of the West Wind finally becomes ABA, BCB, CDC, and EE. Notice, I will repeat myself, that the original rhyme scheme of Teresa Rima, a form that poet Shelley has employed while writing this poem, was ABA, BCB, CDC. But the rhyme scheme which the way Shelley has changed the rhyme scheme of this poem, that means he also changed the structure of the original form. That means Shelley has also changed and experimented the structure of Teresa Rima, which was initially and originally invented by Dante Alighieri. And I want you to know one more thing, that Dante Alighieri originally came from Florence, Italy. So the fact that this poem was composed by Shelley in Florence, Italy, could be the reason that this idea might have come to his mind, that he should write this poem in the rhyme scheme of Teresa Rima. But here also he made a slight experimentation in the form and structure of the poem, in the sense that he even tried to change the structure of the poem. That means the original rhyme scheme of Teresa Rima, as it was invented by Dante Alighieri, was ABA, BCB, and CDC. But the rhyme scheme which Shelley has invented, or rather added to Teresa Rima, was he added a slight couplet to the entire rhyme scheme. At the end, he added a couplet which goes along the lines of EE. So the rhyme scheme of Ode to the West Wind becomes ABA, BCB, CDC, and EE. This is the rhyme scheme of Ode to the West Wind. Let me repeat: ABA, BCB, CDC, EE. So this last couplet, EE, is not initially present in the rhyme scheme. That means, notice, I will repeat myself again to make you understand. The original structure of Teresa Rima, as it was invented and presented to us by Dante Alighieri, and the form he used in Divine Comedy, was ABA, BCB and CDC. This was the rhyme scheme of the original Teresa Rima. That means the rhyme scheme of Teresa Rima is ABA, BCB, CDC. But Shelley experimented and changed the structure of Teresa Rima also, and he added a couplet to it at the end. So now the rhyme scheme of this poem, that is Ode to the West Wind, becomes ABA, BCB, CDC and EE. So the rhyme scheme of the West Wind, I will repeat myself, becomes ABA, BCB, CDC, EE. It is in the form of, so now the rhyme scheme becomes, it occurs in the form of triplets, but it is an interlocking rhyme scheme. That means each ending has, the ending word of each line is rhyming with the word which follows it in the next line. So what Shelley has done is, Shelley has added an extra couplet to the original form of Dante Alighieri's Teresa Rima, and that's that. I think that I have made this poem easier for you, and hopefully you find this lecture amply useful, or if not amply then somewhat useful. Please let me know in the comment section below, and in case you have not seen the previous videos to this series, I have linked all of them in the comment section below. Please go back to them and have a look. And if you want to go this lecture in a continuity, because most students don't understand the lectures when they go through it in parts, so I would suggest you to now, since the poem has come to an end and since it has finished, I want you to go through each of the videos, that is starting from the introduction part to the second video to the third video and then finally to the fourth video, and watch them together in a series, in the form of a series, to help you in understanding the poem better. So I hope that this series was somewhat helpful to you, and with that being said, I would like to see you in the next lecture probably, and with that I'll be signing off. Thank you.